Okay, we'll get started. So I am Chris Krager from Wichita State University. I'm the cybersecurity manager, and we're going to talk about our journey with data labeling and kind of how we implemented it, how we tested, how we're rolling it out, and all those good and fun things. So what data labeling is, I probably should have asked this. Do you guys know what data labeling is? Have you used it in your organization? Are you using it right now? Do you want to?
We're trying to get it set up.
Okay. So what it is it just puts a label in the metadata of the content for what label you apply to it, and it puts a content marking on that content saying wherever the name of your label is. So for us, I've had this PowerPoint here. I've labeled it WSU Public. You can see a little tiny footer right here that says WSU Public. I didn't put that there. The label put that there. The other thing it does is when something is labeled, it lets you know where does it live, where does that label live in your environment, and it lets you control, if you want to, control how people can interact with that item after it's been labeled. So labeling as a concept is pretty straightforward. You create them, you publish them. If you want a DLP policy, you make that. Everyone in this room could have labels assigned to every single one of their users by the end of the day. It's really not that bad for the basics. The hard part is everything else you have to do. Unfortunately, you have to let people know that you're doing this. They have to know how to do it. And then it's good to have some kind of a policy that says that you have to. And the other reason to go through all this stuff is it makes everyone speak the same language when it comes to your data. Ours are put into 3 buckets I'll show here in a second, but it's public, private, restricted. So it allows us to say, is this WSU private data? Is this WSU restricted data? We now have this common language that everyone can know, and based on what their documents are, they'll know what we're talking about, and we know what they're talking about. Also, you're all probably familiar with CSF 2.0 and those standards we have to meet. Labeling by itself will meet several of those, and then will also help meet, in tandem with other ones, some additional controls. So that's also a pretty good benefit there. Inside of Purview, which is where we're going to be focusing labeling on, the built-in Microsoft Purview is where labeling lives. Getting labels set up in there also enhances all of your other Microsoft tools. So if you're in a Microsoft shop, putting labels on, all of your other tools can respect labeling. It can treat things differently. It can track it however you want. Everything comes back to inside of Purview. If you're not using this tool, it has much, much more than labeling in it. This is a very powerful tool. I would recommend getting in here. We're going to focus on a couple of the solutions in there, but it does spiderweb out into helping all of your other solutions as well. So step 1, that's how do you plan for it. The very first thing you should do is get a policy going. Because I don't know about you guys, but our legal team can be a little, I don't want to say they're slow, but let's just say the policy takes a while. So you can get this policy started with them, and while they're working on it, you can be doing everything else. You can be creating your labels and stuff, doing all this testing while this policy is in the queue. You don't have to wait. So I would get that going first. If you want to look at ours, QR code. If not, it's fine. It basically just says everyone has to put labels on all their stuff by the end of this year is what ours is required to do. Like I said before, we have 3 main buckets that all of our data will fit in: public, private, restricted. We'll let everyone know of this. In our policy, it has examples for each one of these, so it's a little bit easier. We also have a data labeling guide, which I'll get to a little bit later, that also will show examples. So we try to keep it as simple as we can and not overload users with too many labels that they have to understand the intricacies of each one. One thing to think about is you have your buckets where everything goes in, for us, public, private, restricted. In those, you can have additional labels. Something to think about when you're planning is who needs what label. Is it your entire campus? Do they need everything? Does it just your staff that needs some and maybe your students need other ones? Your students get any at all? Or what if they're employees? These are kind of the things you need to think about. If you require your data to be labeled from your staff, are you also going to require your students to label that? Probably not, maybe. One we have here, we've made several that were custom that not everyone gets, but certain groups get. So we have a medical privacy and a HIPAA, for example. So if you're working in our clinics, or you're dealing with any kind of medical data, this can also include HR, because they deal with ADA and workman's comp, all this stuff, that could go in medical privacy. They can use that label. It's only available to those who need it. So we do not flood everyone with this medical privacy label. They don't need to worry about it. I don't want them labeling stuff as medical privacy when it's not. Attorney-client privilege, for example, our legal team was labeling all their emails before this. They would just say, this email is attorney-client privilege, do not forward. They just type that into all their emails. With this label, this is able to put that header on saying attorney-client privilege, and it can disable the recipient from forwarding. So instead of using the honor system saying don't forward it, this label can prevent you from forwarding it. So in that case, that label is just available to our legal team. And that's the other thing to think about is who are you going to be assigning this to? And do you have a way to break it out? If I were to say, to do labeling, you have to have groups in Azure. They need to be entre groups. So if you have a hybrid environment, your local AD security groups, you can't use those. It has to live in Azure. So do you have a way to say in Azure who is what? Can I separate my legal team out? Do I have to do it manually? Can I do it automatically? These are the kind of questions to think about because you will likely need to push labels to certain people and not just the campus. You can start with the campus, much easier. You can just click all users. Now everyone has it. That's easy. So you can do that, but if you want to get really specific, which I recommend you probably will need to do, then you figure out how to separate your people you want to specify into their own groups. So we're going to go into creation. In Purview, and for this little topic here, we're going to be talking about two solutions, is what Purview calls it. We're going to be doing information protection, which that is the creating labels and then publishing them, and then data loss prevention, which is kind of the, it can do much more stuff beyond labels, but it can say if this label is applied to this item, do X. So it gives you customization there. And we'll have some examples of that. So the first thing, you go in, you can create a label, you can define a scope of the label. Where can users use this at? So I would recommend for your base, check all of these. At one point in our rollout, I guess I'll say, in our testing, we had a label just for files. We had a separate one just for emails. And we had them separated out like that. And it kind of turned into a mess. And then we're like, well, I want to label Teams meetings. Well, I can't label Teams meetings unless they're both. So I kind of had to start over with labels at one point. So I would recommend just check all these. If you need one just for email, create that secondary. The other thing here is you can control access, and this is where encryption comes in. If you want a label to apply encryption to your document or your email, that's going to be in control access. And I'll spend majority of the time going over that because I feel like that's the most gotcha part of the whole thing in labeling. And when you do have a label that controls access and applies encryption, it will put a little padlock on your label, kind of like what this symbol is here. And if a label has a padlock, it applies encryption to whatever it is that you're dealing with. There are two ways you can apply encryption. You can let users decide what they want, or you can decide for them. If you let users decide, and it's in your label scope to files, so you have to hit this button here if you do that. Each time they use that label on a Word document or Excel sheet or whatever, they're going to get this permissions box every time, and they'll have to say who can edit this, who can view it, type in those email addresses every single time. It is a huge pain. And that was not surmountable to me, so I did not go with this option. You can do it for if you have a just email only label. It's a little bit nice because you can do a no forward or encrypt only, just the basics of what Outlook has built into it. That's where you can do it. But if you have one that does both, you'll probably run into this. It'll give you this box, and to me that was terrible. So the alternative to that, and what I would recommend, is you can choose to assign the permissions right now. And when you do that, you can say, you click on here, and it basically says who can access this content. If someone receives it, can they authenticate to it and open it? If it's an email, a Word document, whatever. So there's some options here. You can say all users, which probably all of your stuff will. For each of these options, you can say what permissions do you want. And all users can be different from any authenticated users. You can switch these permissions around. And here you can say, what do you want them to do? So for our attorney-client privilege label, I would use that as an example. I said all users can authenticate. This does not publish it to them. All users can authenticate to it, meaning if they receive it, they can open it. And from there, I took off forwarding, which is here somewhere. Forward. I unchecked that for all users. So no one else can forward it. What just happened? OK. And then for the legal team, I added users or groups, put my legal group on there, and allowed full control. So legal can forward it, and no one else can. That's kind of the difference there. So according to your situation, that may be handy that some people can do things that other people cannot do. Let me see if this is. OK, so we're going to talk a little bit more about encryption. It's a little bit of a tangent. But when you apply encryption to an email, and you send that email externally, the recipient does not receive that email. They receive a link to a portal, which is called the OME, or was previously called OME portal, that will look like this box here. When they open this, depending on how your B2B collaboration is set up, they can either authenticate with any Microsoft tenant, or enabled by default is they can do a one-time passcode. They can click on that. Microsoft sends them a code. They put it in, and then that email opens in a portal in a browser. So that email never actually hits their inbox. They don't have it saved. And in this portal, you can customize it. You can say, expire this link after 30 days. So if you send this to somebody, after 30 days, they click on this link, it's not going to work anymore. They can't access it. If you need to send it back to them, you got to resend the email. You can customize this portal like we did here. Like we have our logo up here, and you can customize this text here. You have to do it in PowerShell, which to me was crazy. To edit this GUI, it has to be in PowerShell. It's nuts. So to test it, you have to deploy it and all this stuff. Microsoft has a default portal, so if you don't customize one, it's fine. You'll just get the Microsoft default. But it will send you to this portal. It looks very similar to this, no matter which one you use. In addition to that, if you were to send an attachment in an email, and that attachment was encrypted with one of your encryption labels, that recipient can download it, but if they try to open it, it will ask them to sign in, and if they do not exist in your tenant, they will get this error. So if you're sending stuff to a vendor or to maybe a student's Gmail address or whatever, if it's encrypted, probably they can't open it. And they'll get this error here, and that's because you have to authenticate to your tenant in order to decrypt that content. So if you cannot authenticate, you can't get it. And the reason that you have to, once you log in, is that you have to satisfy your MFA. So in your conditional access, you're going to have some MFA options here that's going to tell external users they have to MFA. If they can't do it, they're going to get this error. So if you were to fix that, one, you need to make sure you have any authenticated user added to your label permissions. This is your external users, your guests, people not in your environment. That's any authenticated. Two, check your conditional access policies. You probably have one that will require MFA for either all users or that all users that include external and guests, or you have one just for guests external. If you do, on your resources here, you need to exclude Microsoft Rights Management. That is the piece that they have to MFA to in order to decrypt that email or that Word document, whatever it is, and get that content out. So I would recommend excluding that. That way, if you do send an attachment to someone and they download it, they can open it and there's no problems. They open it just like they would expect they would. But that's something you'll have to make sure you exclude rights management. Okay. Labeling can also be applied to teams and sites. The two things I want to hit here is if you do control your Teams meeting, whatever you set here will override what a user can set and what your Teams, if you have a template, it will override all of that. Labeling is typically at the highest tip of the hierarchy. So don't think that I'll turn chat off here as a convenience, and if the users want to, they can turn it back on if they need to. That's not how it works. Whatever you control here, the users cannot change. It will be disabled for them to look at. And starting on April 1st, all Teams meetings can have labels on them. It used to just be Teams Premium. That just changed. So now any meeting can have a label. If you choose to control your meetings with these, just be aware you're overriding what a user can do. On sites, if you are to control your sites, and this is a setting we have for some of our restricted sites, you can turn on the allow web-only access. This is a little tricky and gets some problems in our environment because if you have a restricted site with this option turned on, if you were to send a SharePoint link out to someone, like a Word document, they will not be able to download it or print it. So if they're outside of your environment at all, and from what I can see, this is not customizable in any way, so just keep that in mind. Anything in a SharePoint site that has this label on, if you're not joined to your domain, you cannot download it, you cannot print it. So we're gonna hit data loss prevention real fast. I'm gonna show you one that we have that is for our internal use labels. And what this one does is if you apply an internal use only label to an email, it will not allow you to send it to an external address, like a Gmail or Yahoo. Even by accident, you cannot do it. In DLP, something to know about that is it's basically just a big if-then statement. It's just conditions and then an action if it evaluates the true. So in this condition, we're saying if someone shared content with outside an organization, which for us is just the @wichita.edu is our organization, and I'm saying it has one of these internal labels on it, and this is where you set labels to do certain actions, is here, where you say which labels will apply. And for us, we have some partner domains. We have some partners, have some affiliates. I wanted the internal label to work with them as well, that you could send to our affiliates. That is me basically saying if the recipient's not that, is how you exclude your affiliate. So I could send to WSU Tech, for instance, with an internal, even though it's not an @wichita.edu address, I can still send it because of this exclusion. And in the action, it's just restrict users. And we have a policy tip that if someone does try to do it, it'll come up here and it will tell them, I'm not going to send this email to those recipients. And for AI, there's lots of AI policies inside of Purview. What I would recommend is going to DSPM, is your Data Security Posture Management. In here is where it kind of rolls up all of your AI policies. From all across Purview, they will all exist in DSPM. It's like a repository for those. Also, DSPM gives you recommendations for policies. So if you want to know where do I start in making an AI policy, go to DSPM and the recommendations. You just click create policy. It's there for you. You can customize it. It tells you what it does. Hit create, it creates it, and you're done. It's very easy. There's a ton of different options in there for policies it will suggest. If you start there, you can edit it. You can see the logic they're using. And if you want to change it, you can. But I would definitely start there. And a specific one that we have, an AI policy, is if you're in DLP, you can scope the policy to just your Copilot chat, for instance. I don't know if we're all using Copilot in here or not, but you can scope it to your Copilot chat. And you can say, if that content has, for us, it's the WC restricted label, and that's all it's looking for, anything with this label, the action I have is restricting Copilot from using it. And you can see here I put a little test. I just uploaded a file to it, said, hey, can you summarize this? It said, no, I can't. And that will prevent it from the Copilot in your organization if you're using it. So that's web chat, that's the in-app. If it's in-app, it can summarize it in the, if you're in a restricted Word document and you have this sidebar, it will summarize it in that sidebar, but not outside of that. So for training and rollout, this is the biggest part of it. I would have multiple options for how to train, work with your users. We provide online options. We'll do in-person. We'll do Teams meetings. We've created we use KnowBe4 for our training system. We have a SCORM out there that we assign people to take this training. Also, start at the top. If you want to train someone, go to the director, go to the dean, go to the department head and say, I want to push labels out to your group. When can I get on, who do I need to work with, get on your schedule to get people trained and then get the requirement rolled out to them. Because you don't want people under them having to require it, them complaining about it and going up. The director has no clue that this is even happening. You want them to complain about it to the director tells them to suck it up and do it anyway. That's what you need. Also, when you train, I would roll out the requirements to them as soon as you train them. So for us, we are slowly rolling out requirements. We're not waiting for everyone to get trained, just do it campus-wide at the same time. As we're doing it, I'm trying to get people more used to it so that people who haven't been trained are now receiving emails, receiving documents that have labels on them. So they're at least familiar with them. I would like them to be, hey, what's that? Let me do that too. But I want them to at least get familiar that those exist. Over time. A couple minutes. So I also have a bonus for you. We at WSU have synced our Banner ERP information, some of it, with Active Directory. And I cannot describe how useful this has been for us in any situation. So for me, if I'm doing some kind of AD query, now it can put in what department are you in? Are you a current employee? Are you a student? I can put all that into the queries I have that would enrich any kind of data set I have. It will also give you built-in Outlook org charts, because if your manager's in there, now it knows that. Outlook can build those automatically. And more importantly for labeling is we have dynamic M365 groups. So when we say all staff are required to do labeling, now we can come in here and say, if you're a current employee, you're added to this group, that group is required to do labeling. So when you leave, you'll drop out, and when you get onboarded, you'll come in. So there's no manual process going on here. For my legal team, I say, yeah, if your department's general counsel, you get the legal label, and just have it do that. I don't care who gets hired and fired over there. Doesn't matter. Label's just going to work. So I would recommend at least looking into doing something like that if you're not already. Also, if you do use M365 groups, the mistake I've made is that it will automatically send you a welcome to this group email for anyone you have in there. So if you decide to make a group for all your staff that has 4,000 people in it, you sent 4,000 emails, and they're all going to ask, what is this? Because you probably didn't name it something friendly. So for this, when you make these groups, these are a couple of PowerShell commands you can use because you can't do it in the GUI for whatever reason. And you can use these to, number one is the most important one, turn off the welcome message. Why that's enabled by default, I have no clue. I hate it. The other things that are good here that I put on here is, make it so people can't email that entire group or something. Turn that off. Make sure you can't add a calendar event to everybody. So just some tips for things that I've ran into, had a problem with, sent too many emails out to people. So I wanted to add that. And that's it. Are there any questions? I can check my Hoover app.
You on A5?
Yeah.
Any other add-on you had to have besides A5?
No, just A5.
Can you set default classifications? Like when someone creates content, it automatically sets it?
You can set default labels. You can say your default's whatever, and they can change it. We are not doing that because right now, even though not everyone in our organization is required to label, they all have the option. The button is turned on for everybody. No one knows about it, no one thinks about it. If I turned a default on, there's no reason to think about it again. They've never used it before, and if it starts out as default, they'll never use it ever. And in those 2 seconds that it takes to label something, which literally is 2 seconds, it gives me a little bit of time to think about what this is, because WC private is our most generic. 99 out of 100, I'm doing that. Sometimes, as my mouse is moving to private, I'll think, well, maybe this should be internally used. Maybe this should be restricted. So it gives me that just a second to think about, to change what it actually should be. So I found with that. Any other questions?
For the Teams meeting, I think I saw you could prevent it from automatically recording. Can you turn off recording altogether if it's a sensitive meeting or reading off social security numbers or something like that?
Yeah, we've set up a template for, we're testing out telehealth in Teams. And yeah, we've turned off, because on the template we can apply a label. On that label, we've turned off recording, AI summaries, the whole thing. Because even if with a template, if you have that, a user could change it in a template if they wanted to. But with a label, they cannot change it. Yeah?
So we talked about tagging things and then maintaining control over them using encryption. Does it also have features of enforcing documentation retention?
Yeah, so there are retention labels and retention policies, which are different. We haven't done too much with that yet, but that does exist. Retention is this whole world of stuff. You have a ton of options there to either delete something after a certain time, just keep it for that long, whatever. But yes, those can work together. Yeah.
So if somebody is working on one of these documents, will it still send if they don't have a label attached to it?
So when you turn requirements on, which in your policy, when you roll it out, there'll be a checkbox that says require users to label. If they go to save that document, it has to be labeled. They must put a label on it before they can save it. And if it's an email, they must put a label on it before they can send the email. And there'll be a little pop-up box that says, what label do you want to put on this? And it's right in your face. If you're in SharePoint, because it's saving all the time, it will ask you to save instantly, right when you make it, because it's trying to save right away. So if it doesn't have a label, and then all of a sudden your requirements got turned on, it will just have you label it right then. But it's not going to, like if you had 100 Word documents saved in your OneDrive or something, it's not going to go and say, hey, you have all these documents you need to label. It's not doing that. But when you open that document up and save it, that's when it will ask you to label it. Yeah.
So we talked about during tagging files during their creation at that point. What about detecting existing files on file systems on laptops, desktops, et cetera, servers?
So that's auto labeling. Purview does have that. They have an auto labeling engine that you'll set up. It'll have a server. It goes out. Let's say you want to do a file share. You want to see what's on there. You have to create a user account, give it permissions to that share. It will go in, scan all those documents, and it will come back, and you can tell it, try and detect what is this document. If there's a social security number or something, you can say, if there's something sensitive in here, mark it restricted, otherwise mark it private. So you can have it default to label during a scan. But that's a separate step. It needs its own server and some stuff for that.
Have you looked at using automation to start the dialogue with the user? So for instance, they create a file, it gets detected as having, sensitive content, and then starting a conversation in the form of either, you mentioned tooltip is something that generates as part of the existing process, but is that something you can automate, such as starting up a Teams chat, having a bot contact people, say, hey, I see that you're doing this.
Having a bot, I'm not sure about. Let me, actually, I do have a slide on this. Let me, right here. So when you're making a label, there is a section for auto labeling, and that's different than the auto labeling scanners. Different thing, same name. Inside the label, you can auto label, and you can say, check for these things. So if you check for a social security number on this document, you can have a tooltip, it's like the one here, that says, I've seen this. And in your policy, you can either say, if it detects this, apply it automatically, make them apply that label, or like what this is doing, is recommending you apply the label. In here, there's you can also do like a learn more or something. You can put in your help desk email. You can put in this, hey, contact someone if you have a question. You can do that kind of thing. So it's probably the closest to what you're talking about.
Thank you.
With that one, is that the situation where it was detecting HIPAA just because it saw the word, but there wasn't really any PHI in there?
Yes. So Microsoft will give you two things when you're working with labels. They'll give you a sensitive information type, which is basically a regex lookup for social security number, driver license, bank account, whatever, or a trainable classifier. This is going to be the machine learning. I'm looking for a threat. I'm looking for medical information. I'm looking for stock manipulation. They have thousands of options you can click on. That one gives a lot more false positives. So it tries its best to detect that. What you can do, though, is you can set up a policy, if you want, that if it sees these things, it can just send you an alert. It can just tell you, hey, I saw this. I think it's HIPAA data. It can just let you know. But that would be more in communication compliance, which we haven't covered in here. Yeah?
So did y'all start off y'all's DOP with like labeling stuff, or did y'all start off with like creating policies that like caught things and blocked things?
We got into Purview originally. We started using it more. We had been using it for e-discovery and stuff. We started using it more for labeling. That's why we started. So for us, labeling came first. And then it was, let's look at DLP. And then DLP, some of them use labels, some of them don't. I mean, DLP is very powerful. You can do, you could say if someone sends an email outside the university, send it to the trash. You can block all email. It's very powerful. It does not rely on labeling, but it can use labeling to help.
Does it work for all file types, extensions? Well, I'm thinking like even something like just a screenshot, an image file, how would the user apply a label to that?
So that's a good question. It does work with like PDF. You can turn it on for that. For those other extensions, that's something that I just saw an announcement this month that they're adding support for any other type of extension. But a lot of those, anything in Purview and labeling, there's 4 asterisks next to it. So a lot of that is like, well, you have to have this Purview app downloaded to your computer, and then it can use it. And then it labels it, but it's only labeled locally. So it depends. The label really is in the metadata. So if it can't edit that, it's not going to have a way to do that. But yeah, there's work. Everything in Purview changes constantly. There are 2 slides I had to change last week because they got changed. And everything for labeling Teams meeting That happened in April. It's like it's constantly changing, look and feels changing. Some of these slides, as far as the look, are different right now than it was when I made this a month ago. So it was constantly updating.
Do you require users to label, like, you know, you had your public label?
Mhm.
If someone's just taking notes and putting it on their personal OneDrive or a personal drive, do you still require them to label it public?
If they're part of the requirement group, then yes. But we do have a label called public, or not public, personal.
Okay.
And they could put that personal label on for stuff like that. Because some of our students get trapped in that if they're student employees. They'll be required to label so that when they're doing homework or something, they'll have to do it. So we have personal to kind of help with that too. And it's kind of annoying for them, but you know, they'll get over it. It's kind of my attitude towards it. Any other questions? Okay. I'm Chris Krager. I love talking about labeling, so if you have questions, just come talk to me about it. I'll be happy to answer your questions. All right, thank you.